Hey everyone, I'm Alan Schimmel,
And this is Mitch Ashley.
and you're listening to
DevOps Chats.
DevOps Chats. We're back. Mitch, I was away. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
I'm not feeling sorry for you.
Yeah, no, sorry, not sorry.
Like.
I did. We had the greatest time up in Cape Cod. You know, we go there. I used to try to go every year. Now I probably get there every other year, but you know, I love it up there for, especially if you're like a Northeasterner like I am. It's just a great place to go on vacation. It has a lot of the Hampton stuff without a lot of the Hampton stuff.
Yeah, without the bougie part.
Yeah, it's not bougie. Cape Cod's not bougie. No, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of, huge multi-million-dollar mansions and all kinds of nice stuff. But you don't have to, women don't have to put their makeup on to go to the store there and
be cash.
Yeah, it's very casual.
The lobster's good. Well, how was the lobster?
What lobster?
Or should I say lobster? What's the lobster? Was there any left when you
I want a monster lobster. That's where you get them, a monster. You want a mini or a monster? And it's not just the lobster, it's the lobster rolls.
Oh,
and then it's the steamers and the fried whole belly clams and what do they call the not quag, that's a place in Long Island. Quahog.
I don't know what that is.
Quahog. It's like a stuffed clam.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's clam with breadcrumbs and Portuguese sausage and stuff like that. So all good stuff.
Just right there is a vacation.
Yeah, it's all good eating. Anyway, enough about me and my vacation. Let's talk DevOps.
Okay, let's talk about DevOps. What are we talking about today?
So, one thing I wanted to talk, well, it's the same topic, really, two different angles. But that is the increasing joining, if you will, of DevOps and DevSecOps.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is going on now 3 years or more. DevOps is becoming DevSecOps. Security is more important, but it really has sort of settled in, if you will. And when we talk about software supply chain security, SBOMs, all of these kinds of things. There was some news this week on the SEC sued a company because they didn't do not Sonic, excuse me.
No, I remember trying
the
to
court dismissed the SEC saying they didn't have power.
Yeah.
It was the big hack. It led to a big Microsoft, very similar to CrowdStrike kind of stuff, became Microsoft's problem. This also became Microsoft's problem. It's a company out of Austin, and SolarWinds.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah, a little company called SolarWinds.
Little company. But in any event, Mitch, it's important, more important than ever, that we take software supply chain security, it's top of mind, it's top priority, to the point where over the last 3 or 4 years, it's become paramount, right? When GitLab is a DevSecOps company and GitHub is all about DevSecOps and CloudBees is and JFrog is. And that's just the DevOps companies, right? How many other companies are, software supply chain? It seems to be the new battleground.
It is. What it reminds me of, CISA came out with it's been a little while back, it was in 2023, the Security by Design, a program to help you elevate security within your organization in a software sense, but in a total security sense too. And there's even a pledge. I know AWS either was one of the first or one of the leaders that helped get it started. I can't remember how many companies, like 200 companies that have signed up, technology vendors that have signed up as part of that. And they give you some good ideas, good kind of suggestions of how do you elevate this conversation of, it isn't about, okay, I want to make sure there's no bad malware in the images I'm downloading from Docker Hub. Well, that's one of 1,000 vectors, right? How do you think about this more holistically, the whole life cycle of how you're developing software? How do you secure this tool chain that you're using? How do you secure the deployment channels of your software, right? So when people receive it, they know they're getting the valid stuff. And, all the code that's yours and all the code that's not. How do you know what's in it? The whole SBOM, and how do you respond when there's an incident to that? So it's an interesting. I like the program a lot. I don't know that it's not going to like swing the needle the other way, but I think it's a good start.
Absolutely. Mitch, I did a fireside chat for our Cloud Native Now virtual event on the 25th. And I had the pleasure of interviewing George Castro. George is like DevRel and evangelist for Cloud Native Computing Foundation for the ecosystem and partners and everything. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about this very topic, right? Where, think about what it used to be before we had open source, before we had cloud native. And I mean, even just the concept of version control, right? Using Git for version control and stuff. And in many ways, George has this, he calls it a naturalist view of this whole ecosystem, where it's an evolving kind of thing. We went, from single cell organisms to multi-cell organisms to mass extinctions to the age of the dinosaurs and variations and everything like this. And in some ways, you couldn't have software supply chain security today without having version control is almost at the root of it. But what we see today is it's very hard to get your head around is the problem, Mitch. It's really hard, especially if you haven't been doing this for 20 years, right? It's hard.
Ideas kind of run their course too, right? I mean, when we first started talking about DevSecOps, it was shift left, right? Well, okay, let's have the developers do it, or let's work with the developers in the design and kind of fix the problems up front, which is a good quality and approach to security. And now I think we're much more holistic, at least like most of us are, thinking about all of it matters, right? It's the entire tool chain end to end. It's the entire software workflow and all parts of it. And then how do you secure elements that are touching those things, right? How do you secure your CI/CD platform, right? Do you apply things like isolation, segmentation, things that we know from the security world, kind of entering into the software and configuration management world? But to your point, you don't have an SBOM if you don't have a version of the software that it's for. You don't have a version of software if you don't have version control that's managing all that kind of at the input to the whole process. So it's much more connected in our thinking today, I think, versus I'm going to solve these individual security problems in my software development.
Agreed. In that same vein, though, Mitchell, this is not new, right? DevSecOps and whether you want to call it SecOps, marrying dev, breaking down the silos between them. I think sometimes we forget where we live. This is old hat for us. So I was recently speaking with some of the few people at the Forbes Council. Someone had sent me an invite if I, wanted to join the Forbes Council. And let's be clear, wanting to join the Forbes Council means writing a check.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because it's sponsored, it's pure sponsor stuff. And if you write your check, you can write as much as you want, but getting them to approve it is a very time-consuming thing. So it really comes down, you can write maybe once a month, once every 2 months or something. But so I was looking at the Forbes Council, and I see an article that came out in the last couple of days about, breaking down the silo between dev and SecOps. I said, oh, someone's writing similar DevSecOps stuff, just like I would. And yes, it is a pay-for-play platform. Everybody, if you pay your money and you get your ticket, right? You pays you money, you get your ticket. But I read this article and I say to myself, Self, is this the state? Is this the state? Like, are we at this remedial level? Do people not in my bubble, are they just discovering this? Is there such a time lag, right, between the early adopters to the early mainstream to the later mainstream to the laggards? Because this is kind of elementary 1 + 1 = 2 stuff. And I really, if that's the state of the art, no wonder why we're so screwed up.
Well, you know what? I think it's something that you and I just don't have the exposure to because we're not in a large enterprise like so many people work in. The size of the organizations and, you know, the mass of it and the momentum, kind of the flywheel of each one of those groups of what they're on and getting them to kind of step out of that group. You know, we don't live in that world. So for us, you know, it's just like the difference between you were talking about the Forbes. You could sign up and be paid to publish one article on Forbes, or you and I can turn around and post an article in the next half hour on our sites. You know, it's sort of like we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think it's hard for us to appreciate sometimes how hard it is to get things changed inside of an organization, and what somebody like a Larry Mashron did when he was at Comcast and helping get DevOps and DevSecOps rolling. And you just have to have people who are sort of a force of power, a force of nature that can just grind it out and advocate and, you know, be that advocate that get people on board and start making changes. So I have to remind myself of that a lot because, you know, we're talking about cloud native adoption. Well, how many monolith and non-cloud native apps do we have out there? Well, 90% of it, 99% of it probably. It's, you know, it's a small part of the world growing fast, but it's not what most of the world is.
No. And, you know, speaking of Larry Mascheroni, he actually is presenting on our Cloud Native Now virtual event on the 25th. Yeah, and he is, you want to talk about a force of nature, Larry is. I enjoy listening to his presentations. But in any event, you know, Mitchell, it goes back to something I realized. We're doing DevOps.com 10 years ago. We've lived in this DevOps bubble 10 years, 10 plus years. Mm-hmm. And for all the people, the naysayers, the platform engineerings and this and that, and long live this, that's dead. The fact of the matter is, when you get out to the mainstream, to these large organizations, all of these concepts are still relatively new and untested and novel to them, right? They're still going through their adoption curves and so forth. So I think it's important to remember that when you see an article like this in a Forbes, you know, you are reminded that, hey, the world doesn't necessarily march to our drum, or we don't march to their drum, or we're, you know, there are things I'm sure we're drastically behind on, Mitchell, like such as, you know, hot new music out there today. But, you know, it really struck me like, man, who the heck needs this?
I know the article you were talking about, it was, when I read it, it was like, I felt like I was reading an article 7 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's something we would have written in DevOps.com 8 years ago.
And that's no diss against the author of the article. It's perfect. I mean, it's where they are, right? So I got to believe it's, you know, authentic and representing their thinking about this. So let me flip the coin on you, though. I think whether, you know, the world has flipped over and everybody's doing DevOps and everything's changed, no. But I think what has changed is DevOps has survived and DevOps has thrived in its own way. Maybe it's not, you know, pervasive on everything. But because DevOps survived and thrived, I think that's why we have platform engineering as a discipline. That's why we have
absolutely.
You know, I think about before we had DevOps, what new thing was there? It was Agile. That was new. But before that,
that was strictly
ops,
developer.
We just had ops and development and database people and network people and
security,
cloud security, and they all did their thing, right? They didn't pay attention to each other. They just fought over budget.
But because that's that exactly because I think that's part of the era of IT as cost center, not as IT as cost generator, as
Cost to
profit
do
generator.
Yep. Not part of the business, cost of the business.
Absolutely.
So things
Anyway,
have changed.
Mitch, that's all. That's what I had for this week on DevOps. I don't know if you have anything else you're working. Actually, we do. You have something you're working. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're just putting the finishing touches on the. I know I talked about it before. On the DevOps Next report.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah,
we'll do a whole series of podcasts on that one, Mitch.
Good. I think it's going to be really worthwhile because there's some great stuff in it. We're also in it looks like about August timeframe going to be doing our AI and DevOps report, which has got some really great data.
Well, annual AI and DevOps.
There you go.
Yeah.
2024, baby.
Yeah. I get you.
So we did a study a couple of years ago, which is more about kind of what do you think is going to be happening with AI and DevOps, and it's pretty surprising how much people said it's influencing and impacting their work already. But I guess in the world of copilots and generative AI, it's easy for developers to use it. So, and on the other hand, it's not too surprising, but it's good stuff.
Cool.
It's so much fun to work on this stuff. I enjoy it so much.
Cool.
So,
all right. That's about all I have, Mitch. I got to go actually hop on another recording. It's great seeing you. I'm happy to be back. We'll be back next week. Absolutely. We'll be back. Is next week Black Hat? No, the week after.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week with another fresh DevOps chat. And until then, though, this is Alan Schimmel.
And Mitch Ashley.
And you just listened to another episode of
DevOps Chats.
We're out.